Apparently, 420 things grow in Ontario. It's a good place. Where Dave's not there, man. Okay. Check out youtube.com/420things. Four things, things capital, THINGS, for DIY. Okay, apparently you get medical videos, growing and all things a beginner needs to know when you're growing your own medicine at home. Well, I gotta check it out. 420 THI. Oh, youtube.com/420things.
420 things grow in Ontario. Man, that cameo thing with Tommy Chong cracked me up so bad. I gave him a list of things I wanted to say, and he just couldn't do it. And maybe he should have laid off before he did it. All right, guys. So welcome. Thanks for showing up. I appreciate you guys stopping by. Today we're talking about, well, you've seen it, right? You've seen the topic. You got, and if you follow me on Instagram, you haven't really seen it on YouTube because YouTube's policies. I am currently growing some medical plants in my tent, and I've decided to try my hand at breeding. And I am really new to the game. But the gentleman I have on today, he is not new to the game. This guy, he is a teacher. He's a mentor. He's been helping me out. He's a great guy. And we were talking back and forth. And I'm like, hey man, why don't we do it on YouTube? So here we are. So we're going to bring Scott on, and he's going to tell us a little bit about himself. Hey, so why not? Scott, welcome to the stage.
Hey, thanks for having me. Love the intro there. That's super great.
Yeah, it was a couple $100 or whatever it was, and Cameo to pay for it. And if he would have said what I really wanted, it would have been super cool. But he messed it up so bad. I'm like, I'm gonna leave that in. Awesome.
Yeah, that's classic, right? I love that. I like that things grow in Ontario. I love that.
Do you know where I might have borrowed that from?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. So, and when I first was doing my logo, so this is my logo. My brother's the graphics designer. I'm like, hey man, you know that logo from Foodland? I said, I'm growing stuff in Ontario. I said, maybe we can make it into a leaf and we can do this. And he goes, nah, man, don't do that. I got you. And he got me this one, but that was in Ontario. And it's like, some people know it and then they go, oh, that's awesome. And other people are like, I love the jingle, or it was just that catchy little thing I always said in start of my videos. So it's like, but it definitely came from Foodland, right? Like they, it's again, no duh, you know that. So why don't you tell everybody about yourself there, Scott?
So my name is Scott Golem. I am the Research Facilities Manager at Niagara College for the Horticultural and Environmental Sciences and Innovation Center. So I oversee all the different horticultural research we do at Niagara College, as well as the cannabis research as well.
Nice. All right. So yeah, that's I'm still learning this program, so don't I guess this one is okay. When you have more like 3 or 4 guys, it starts getting a little bit wonky, but yeah. So and that's I met you through Kurt and H over at Bud Trainer. Shout out to Bud Trainer guys. They work with you. I think they were going down this week, weren't they, to do some research?
Yep, they're coming down this week. So come to take a look at some research we can do for them and kind of help optimize and show how well the products work.
Nice. Yeah, and it's always nice to have another, whether it's Ontario, but a Canadian-based company. You know what I mean? It's tough to find these days.
It is. It's very hard to find.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's dive right into it, because I don't know how much time you have, and I don't want to take you too much of time, because like I said, man, I am that dumb guy. Not that I'm dumb. Listen, I always call myself dumb. I'm not educated enough to make the decisions or make these stuff, but I always try it. I try something, I fail at it, I'll learn from that mistake. And, and like, I like when I was working and stuff, I would lead by example. And that example is trial and error. You know what I mean? It really is to just get it. So I'll bring everybody up to speed that's not up to speed here. So I started with some genetics. Shout out to Crimson Grows. He's in the chat there. He bred a genetic that he has, and he calls it Holy Moly Donut Shop. and it's his F2 or F3. I'm not sure which package I have, but I'm like, you know what? Like this community, I find on whether it's YouTube, Instagram, or whatever, everybody tries to be decent, tries to be. Sometimes it's not, and you get some drama, but again, what are you going to do? Overall, everyone's usually pretty helpful, and that's all I was trying to do. My YouTube channel, I started it. I had a light that I bought it from China. I didn't know the process. It was cheap. I'm cheap. I can't afford, the HLG light, which was like, $1,500 American or something. I got the one from China. It was like $300 delivered to the door. I'm like, I'll try it. I did a video, and I showed what I had. I'm not an expert on it, and was it good? Was it great? Yeah. But I mean, that's that sort of community of sharing knowledge and sharing that sort of stuff. And I really appreciate you sharing, because again, for me, I reached out to Scott, everybody. I'm like, hey Scott, I'm like looking for this, and I'm Googling this. I'm like, is there some information here? Like, why is it not here? So that's what we're going to start with today. So I've already grown the mothers and the fathers, and I started those a little bit early to get moving forward with those in flower. I started them a week and 4 or 5 days early, flipping them into their own little unit, and just tried to get them a little going to get the pollen out before, because someone, whether it was you, whether it was somebody else, this community said, hey, it's probably a good idea. And what I noticed, I should have started the females and the males right away, earlier, like even from seed. I would have started them a week earlier, just because he's got them dialed in. They're short, they're stocky, he's got the, he's dialed in his genetics. So the other ones that I have are probably F1s or S1s or whatever they are, and they're not as dialed in. So they're like, I got a tall one, I got a short one, I got whatever. So it would have been mistake one that I've learned. I probably should have started the donor parents maybe a week or two ahead of the first seeds, right? Mm-hmm. I learned. So they've done that. Now they're in there. And I have got to the point, and I know you told me, you go, collecting pollen is so tedious. And I don't disagree with you. It is everywhere in my house.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Yeah. Pollen's a hard one to contain, especially when you're trying to do like something small. You start collecting, all of a sudden pollen's everywhere.
Yeah. And I so that's where I'm at. So I did that. I collected it, and then I talked to you about it. You said 25 microns, right? Is about where pollen is.
25, 30 micron size.
So I used my 125 SIF screen that I had sitting in a box, and I put it on a table. I put it over some cardboard or a Bristol board or whatever you want to call it, poster board. Kids call it these days. And I shook the plant over it, and man, oh man, those, what do you call those, like helicopter looking remnants of the seed pod? What is that? Does it have a specific name?
I'm not sure what the actual physical name of that is. But yeah, basically just the pollen sac when it opens up, that just kind of the outer shell of those.
Yeah, they were everywhere. They were everywhere. So I took the screen off, got rid of those, had not a baseball card. I don't know why I said baseball card, but a playing card. I collected it, and I got it there, right? So I got it all. I put it in a jar, and what I know, we talked about this before. I use these. I got these off of Amazon, and what I'll do is I'll put like a link in the description after the video. If you're looking at this at a later point, it's like $10 or $15 or whatever, and it'll like do me forever. But it takes out moisture and oxygen, or what is it? It does both, right?
Mainly just the moisture is what you're really looking at taking out for this pollen, because the pollen is naturally wet, right? So when you collect it, it is kind of slightly moist. So you want to make sure, one, that in the tube it dries it out so it stays viable longer, and two, when it's wet, it kind of clumps together a lot more in whatever it is you're storing in as well.
Okay, so I definitely did that. And these have color changing, so they're orange right here, and then when they've sucked in too much, they turn to a green color. And I put a pinch of them inside, put the pollen in there, and they turn green right away. So I added more of the beads, and then now I'm kind of more of there's a few that are a little bit green, but they're mostly all orange now. So I'm assuming that they self-regulate, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So again, it's in there now. This is a question I wanted to ask you. So now I have it in like in a jar, like a glass jar with a seal, and it's fairly big because I collected a fair bit, right? I would like to hand pollinate some stuff outside this year. If the seeds I get here are good for my keeper plants, I want to be able to do that. Fridge, freezer, cold, dark place. What are we looking at for storage?
Typically, I like to keep my pollen in the fridge. Some people say freeze it. If you're going to freeze it, what I'd likely tell you to do is batch it into smaller containers. So typically the small kind of microfuge tubes that you see seeds a lot of times come in, you can store it in really small amounts that way. The big thing is that if you put it in the freezer, when you take it out to thaw, you basically want to let it thaw to room temperature before you open it, because of the moisture that kind of comes out of that whole freezer process. Adds more moisture to the pollen, and then whatever you kind of put back after that is more likely to go bad. So that's where kind of smaller allocations of that, if you do plan on freezing it, it will store longer in the freezer. But I find that in the fridge, I haven't had any problem really after about a year. It's still viable and everything still works. As long as you kind of keep it sealed and in the fridge and you have those beads in there, you're pretty much good.
No, oh, that's nice. Hey, talking to a bud trainer, there they are.
Hey.
Yeah, no, okay, a year. I did okay. That's yeah, man. And listen, if I'm everybody that does know, or some maybe that doesn't know, I decided to do. I'm doing them in the bud cups, right? So I have very small plants. Even the male was in a bud cup, and it was very small. But man, oh man, is there a lot of pollen in a very small package, right? I was blown away how much there was. But I have 16 different cultivars in my flood table that I'm using a dripper in each bud cup. And I just was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to pollinate them all. Right. So at first, when I talked to you, I'm like, ooh, it's tedious. I'm like, well, I got to do it at least once to try it and see. And I did it. And I'm like, okay. And now I'm shaking the plant. I'm like, oh, there's no pollen left, right? There's none left to fall off now. I'm like, oh, well, I'll put it back into the tent. I didn't know. I was like, I did see that some were already open, some weren't open, but they were very close to being open. If you were to, like, I guess my question is when you see a pollen sac and you do that and you shake it all, and it's done, and all the mature ones have released what they were going to release, how much time would it be for the next wave? Or like, is it the very next day? Is it 4 or 5 days? Like, how long would that next cycle be? Maybe, I guess is what it would call.
It kind of depends. I find typically what works best for me if I'm collecting pollen is I'll shake out all the pollen I can get, and then I'll wait about 3 days to get the next set, because again, it is time consuming and tedious. So you want to make sure that it's worth your time and you get enough pollen coming out of it. You don't want like a little tiny drop and be like, well, that wasn't worth the effort. But again, whenever pollen sacs open up, the big thing is that once they've dropped the pollen, you want to kind of remove those from the plant. So again, shaking them and getting it off the plant, just kind of rub your hand over it, because if those pollen sacs stay on there after they dropped it, they start rotting. And then you end up getting a lot of botrytis and different kind of other issues, especially if you are going to open pollinate into the rest of your tent. You don't want to put a bunch of disease into those plants as well.
Yeah, so that's what I did. I waited 3-4 days, and I went into my tent because I had it in a separate tent. And I wasn't really, listen, if I was doing this and I had a tent that I was flowering and I didn't want to pollinate, I would have pollinated it. It was everywhere, man. Like I was being very careful, like touched it, and it was going, right? So after 4 days, I went in there and I touched the plant, and sure enough, some fell. So I'm like, okay, perfect. And I don't know if anybody caught it, but I did it on Instagram. I did a slow-mo video. Not knowing, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do it anyways. And I thought it would be cool content. And I took the plant, I set the camera on the tripod slow-mo, and and the fans, I left the fans going because I wanted to see it, And oh man, was there a lot of pollen. Like, it was ridiculous. Huge cloud. And not only that, because I don't know anything, I know that you had mentioned make sure you get rid of that, and we'll get into that part of my journey next. I took them and I just shook it inside the tent, and it went everywhere. Okay, I probably didn't need to do that, and I did it overkill. But you know what? All my plants are pollinated now. That's for sure.
That's a
but but holy geez, everywhere I looked. There was one time I was doing a live, or I was just doing a video, and I'm like, what? And there was a big fan leaf. I pulled it down. There was like 5 hidden underneath a leaf, and it got in there, like, because of the fan and stuff. Mm-hmm. I had to pull every single plant out, and I was picking off because I didn't want it to do it, right? So while it looked cool for the gram, it was not cool on the cleanup. And then sure enough, I went back in there the next day, and there's another one. I pulled every plant out, and I'm looking at it, and I'm, and it's still there. So what would, if you're not going to collect the pollen into a jar, like, I guess I have a couple questions. So let's start, if we were going to collect it and we were going to have it in, whether it's like one of them vials or even a small container, how do you take a small amount out of that that would cover a 5x5 area with, 10, 15, 20 small plants, even if it was 4. How would you do, like, what would be the best way to take a pinch out that would only what you would need and not like just my whole house is pollen everywhere. So I guess that was how would I do it? Like, but still get everything, not just get this one and protect those other ones and do that. I get that part with a Q-tip, but if you were to just want to release, is that what you do? Like one of those or what?
So you can take a paintbrush or what works well, depending on how much you have, is one of those blush brushes that women use because it's kind of a poofier and you kind of just can get that to spread. Another thing that I've been playing around with recently that seems to work pretty well is you can buy, how would you describe it? It's a pesticide applicator for like powdered pesticides. So it's basically got a bulb on one side and a little kind of container that you put the pollen in, and then you kind of squeeze the bulb and it sprays out in kind of a cloud. So I've been playing around with that and it seems to be working pretty well. But again, it's a bit of a larger volume of pollen just because the storage container to use this contraption is just very large. So I'm looking at kind of finding a makeshift way of kind of slimming that down a little bit. But that does work pretty well. So yeah, a brush or something like that is typically your best way.
So like get it on the brush and then take the brush in and go like flick it.
Yeah, and just kind of flick it around and it'll go through the air. And especially if your fans are on, it's really going to start circulating that all. Because pollen does kind of drop down, if you can take your fans and put them kind of down on the ground, blowing up, that helps kind of keep it circulating as well throughout the whole time. So as it falls, it kind of sticks a bit better to all those pistils.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, blow up, and then even if you were to put on that fan, it would blow up, and then it would hit the cross fan and whatever. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've seen other people too. They'll take like one of the wall fans that they have, and they'll take that paintbrush or blush brush or whatever, and then just tap the brush in front of the fan, so the fan's just going to go boom and create that cloud that's going to spread.
Yeah, you know what I used because I had it. It was not that you could tell here, but it was like a one of those brushes that you use for like whipping up your own shaving cream. I had one of those, and that's how I collected it on the Bristol board when it was, because the card wasn't the great. It's not a very sharp card. Maybe like a razor blade would have been better to get it off, but the brush was able to actually like a broom. And then I looked on it, and sure enough, it was there. Right. So yeah. So but if not, then I guess it would be that same thing with the plant outside the tent. So you're not getting all of the droppings of the inner, like that part that could cause you disease and stuff like that to go inside, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, again, I was like, I planned it up. But live and learn, right? So now I know. But if I'm going to go outside, I'm going to do that. Now, I guess, so I have a little small 2x2 tent, and I'm going to clean it, but I heard through the grapevine that pollen is very not tricky to get rid of, but you really got to get rid of it, right? Because you don't want to impact a flowering tent that you don't want to seed. So I've done a lot of not research, but talking to people, and everyone's like, it hates water, moisture, high humidity. So my plan was to, in the 2x4 tent or the 2x2 tent that I had the mail, pull everything out, get it all out, vacuum everything, do whatever I can do, but then put a dehumidifier in that small space and crank it right up to 100 and let it like humidify the tent to where, and not turn on an exhaust fan or whatever. Would that be enough to get it? Or do I still probably should then wipe that all down, spray it again with some bleach or something? Like, what's the best way to get rid of that pollen?
Yeah, I'd say high humidity is really kind of your best bet. Get it wet, right? So as soon as you get it wet, it doesn't have a very long kind of lifespan. We're looking at like maybe 5 to 10 days in the environment. So it is a pretty short lifespan as long as it has access to the environment around it, right? So when we're storing it, we're trying to keep all that moisture out, right? That's where the beads are for, to try and keep it as dry as possible so it stays viable. So if you're cleaning the tent, you're going to go the exact opposite. High humidity. So if you put your humidifier in there, crank it, you know what I mean? Let that run. That should be more than sufficient. Okay.
But let's say if there's some I missed that I didn't see because I hit it on the way by, like you're saying, viability of it. So let's say my basement, I keep it very dry, especially that back room where I'm growing. But it could be like 40, 45. Is that enough moisture in the air over a few weeks to get the stuff that I really missed? Or should I, even in that back room, give some high humidity?
I go for a bit of high humidity in that room too. But again, as long as you don't have a lot of kind of air movement around that spot, it'll probably kind of land where it lands, and then it'll just be non-viable over a bit of time.
Yeah.
But
I,
again,
I
if you
would
have
feel like,
a plant that's constantly dropping pollen, you're going to have a lot of problems until you kind of deal with that plant.
yeah. Well, I listen, the plant is in the garbage can and it's outside already, and it's
Okay.
like whatever.
Perfect.
And I sprayed it with some water. Now, another thing is what I was thinking is I was talking to somebody and they brought up something. We were just playing Call of Duty the other day and we're talking plants. And Buddy had a plant and he had it in a big container and he wanted to cut it down. And what he did was he cut a couple of the branches off and took those branches and put them in a cup of water. After and it's still then after some time, and I don't know if it maybe it'll be a little bit longer because it's sucking up the water through the instead of the roots, it's sucking up through it. And that's sort of my question. He was like, oh, it was great. And then if later on down the line I had I had none and then I had some. So that sort of water trick, does that work? Would that does it take longer? Is it a good trick to try to, put it in there and if you need to? Because listen, when I had one plant and had 16 different branches, it was hard to keep the pollen sort of contained. So if I would have cut them and put them in little shot glasses of water, a cup of water, anything, it probably would have been a little bit easier to handle. So, but does it take longer maybe, or is it good?
No, it should be good to do that. It'll still slowly mature over time and you'll slowly drop pollen. You see, sometimes what people will do is take like a tinfoil pie plate and cut a slit in that and then put it around the branch that's in the cup of water. So the pollen that is actively dropping will get collected on that pan. So it's another kind of simple way of collecting if you're waiting.
Cool. Okay, so this is where we're going to get into, this is all just a little preamble into where we go. And this is part of the time where we're going to talk about stuff that I am really dumb on. So listen, I get it. NPK, perfect. I know what those stand for. Don't know what they stand for? Google it. Because whatever. But when I look at something as a home grower, I'm not very smart. I have a product and I've used different products and listen, I can tell you I used some organic fertilizer, some dry amendments from Gaia Green. Work great. The numbers on there are 444 and 284. When I look at the numbers on the fertilizer that I have from Floraflex, the numbers are so far from 284 and 444. I go, how does this even still work? But I follow the regimen. I follow what they tell me to do. And from start to finish, in veg, in flower, for flower that I'm going to wash and turn into bubble, it works perfect, right? What? And I talked to Crimson. He goes, you know what? Because I just use the same fertilizer, and he goes, you might have some plants that might need a little bit more of this and more of that. So I guess what I'm looking at is overall just like the sciencey bits about flowering seeds versus flowering just flower. Like, is there different demands? Is what? Let's just elaborate, if you would, sir.
So really the big thing we're looking at is in the vegetative state, the plants are using a lot more nitrogen. So that's going to be that first number that you see on the NPK. So if you see 3 numbers, it's going to be that very first number. So when we're looking at in the vegetative stage, we want to basically put on as much leaf matter and plant growth as we can. So we're going to keep that number a little bit higher. I would say typically what I do is I'll switch to a flowering feed somewhere about 2 to 3 weeks into the flowering stage. Essentially, once the plants stop that major stretch, because I want to give it that nitrogen to allow that plant to bulk up as much as I can prior to that. So when you switch to a flowering feed, typically what they're going to have is a lower nitrogen number. So that first number there, your N is going to go down. So the one that I typically use at home, General Hydroponics makes a really nice one. It's just a powdered fertilizer. It's called Maxi Grow is the veg formula, and then Maxi Bloom is the flowering one. I like it because just a powder. It's super easy. I mix like a 5-gallon pail of water. I'll just add 2 kind of tablespoon scoops to the bucket, stir it up, and I'm good to go. It gives me about a 2.2 EC. pH it a little bit depending on what I'm growing in, and it's good to go. But really the big thing is you're looking at that nitrogen demand between vegetative and flowering. So in flowering, we go a little bit more towards the phosphorus, which is kind of that second number. But what you see in a lot of kind of different nutrient supplies that people have gotten, you'll see that they really bulk that phosphorus number as you get into flower. You'll see kind of late flowering where people will use a really, really high phosphorus kind of feed. But the one trial I did with the University of Guelph, we found that you don't actually need a high phosphorus. So what we did was we were growing in deep water culture and trying different rates of fertilizers to see what they were actually uptaking during that stage. And what we found is that even when you supply a really high level of phosphorus in the flowering stage, the plants aren't actively uptaking it in a huge amount. So what you're really doing is just wasting money on fertilizer that the plant's not actively using. One area that phosphorus becomes a little bit more prevalent in use would be when you're looking at growing in a soil or kind of soilless media. And the main reason is that it doesn't move around throughout the soil like nitrogen stuff. It'll move with the water. When you get phosphorus, it kind of sticks to the soil and stays where it is. So the roots need to actually grow out to find that phosphorus. So unless they come in contact with that, it's not going to kind of be actively flowing with the rest of the water as you give it, say, like a clear water or anything else that's going through. So that's typically why in a soil you will see kind of a higher phosphorus. And I think when I look back on maybe why the thought process behind cannabis plants needing really high phosphorus is probably just because that's what people were doing outdoors, and the roots need to grow to get to where that phosphorus is.
Cool. So then I guess what it boils down, and listen, there was some stuff in there where I'm listening. I go, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool. But listen, I like that. That's why I was saying in relation to this is the stuff that I have. Okay, this is the B1 and the B2, and I guess it's kind of hard to see here. I guess I'm still new to the old. Can I do this full screen? Yeah, I can probably do it full screen. Can we see it here? So B1 is 14,022, and the B2 is 028. Something 18 maybe or something. I can't really see it, but those numbers are crazy compared to like the 284 and the 444. You know what I mean? Like that was what I was getting at. And I guess what it boils down to is I just assumed as a simpleton, I guess is what I call it, not the dummy, but the simpleton, that there would be a different demand from the plant to make seed than it would be to make flower. But I guess not really, right? Because I guess in like what in nature, like that's what I was always doing. Like I was like, oh, I'll start the seeds at the same time, and then Buddy was like, well, no, if you give it a little bit extra time, you get the. I'm like, yeah, but in nature they just go at the same time, like they switch at the same. So I just assumed that hey, but no, anything off the shelf and this is probably why I couldn't find any videos or talks on it, was that you know what I mean? It is that simple as just continue on with your normal flowering nutrients at the, like you said, but that you said 2 weeks in.
Yeah, I usually go 2 to 3 weeks into flowers when I'll switch to the flowering. So again, you're looking for the plants, they have that 2-week stretch where you're going to see like 1.5 to 2 times the growth in that size and that span. They just really pump up. And that's where you want to kind of make sure you have that nitrogen, because that's what it's using to actively put on plant matter itself. So again, vegetative stage, we want kind of a higher first number, lower second number. So a higher N, lower P. Yep. And then when we go to flower, we want a lower nitrogen number and a slightly higher phosphorus. So those are the two things.
Yeah, and Floraflex definitely has some additives that change that too. Oh, I found that when you were full screen.
Oh, beautiful.
That's the
yeah,
just and then you know what I mean. So anyways,
okay. Perfect.
But they have some additives and stuff like that. So what about additives? So if we were to go I the base nutrients, B1, B2, like you were saying, the bloom and the floor, like, that's the stuff. How about the additives? Should I be doing the same additives that I do for like the flowering part? Because there's something right at the end. I think it's, and I never did 2 weeks. I always did 1.5 weeks. So you saying 2 to 3, I might try to go a little bit more. And I guess that's cultivar specific, right? But that's cool. But if I were to, like for Floraflex, for example, they have, do I still have it here? Let's bring it up. So this is their B1, their B2. And then what they have is their bulky B and full tilt, right? So their bloom stimulator, that's what you run from flower week 1 to, I think, don't quote me on this. I'd have to look at my chart. I don't have it in front of me. 5 or 6. And then the last 2 weeks before your flush is the full tilt, which is a late bloom ripener. And if we clicked on it, it would probably tell us what the numbers are. So maybe that would help with what's in there. But
high phosphorus is my guess.
0, 47, 35.
Yeah. So going really high on the phosphorus and the potassium there. Again, in the trials that I ran with the University of Guelph, in a deep water culture system specifically, so again, slightly different there, but they aren't uptaking that much phosphorus, especially late flower. So I don't know, personally, I don't usually do, I used to do a phosphorus load kind of at the end to really bulk up those flowers, but typically what I've actually seen works better for bulking is if you increase the EC or the strength of your fertilizer near the end. Because as you get a higher fertilizer concentration, it basically doesn't take in as much water. So the big thing is you'll see, and I go against the grain on a lot of things. I try a lot of things. I don't like to flush my plants. So I'll put that out there. Especially when I look at growing in rock wool commercially, things like that. I find that when you flush the plants, what you end up getting is as the fertilizer goes down, it can now uptake more water. So the buds bulk up really nice and they look really big and they're really showy, but they're holding a lot of water and that's about it. So when they dry, all of a sudden you have this really nice big cola that shrivels down to like this puny, airy, not what you're necessarily going for kind of structure. And different trials that I've seen with some people out in kind of the Netherlands is that by slowly bringing up your fertilizer concentration at the end, as opposed to going down, it actually puts on kind of more bulk weight for your end final yields.
And that would be the same for whether your flower is seed then, right? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So
I think right now for the fun of it. Oh, sorry. So I just did a run for my seed plants for the fun of it. I'm doing some auto flowers right now. And what I did is I just fed them a veg feed the entire time from day 1 until kind of harvest. And all my seeds look really mature. I don't see any real difference between going with the flower feed as opposed to just sticking with that veg feed the entire time when it comes to seeds specifically. But again, it was just try something new.
Yeah, there's a bit of lag here. I don't know if it's both of us or if can you hear me okay? You were lagging for me. Am I lagging for you? No?
Oh,
okay. Yeah. Now. So it's both just a little. Okay. So, okay. Sorry. Yeah. That I was like, okay. So, but I heard most of your stuff. So you did the veg. Okay. That's cool. And I guess when I hear you say something like that, it sparks my curiosity. And listen, do I flush? I do. I don't flush a whole lot. I listen, the bro science back in the day when you had some medicine that made your tongue a little numb, everyone blamed it on not flushing. That's bro science. Can you clear up some bro science there? Is that something you know anything about?
So I think, again, I've kind of run my own personal, I don't know, taste test trials, I guess you would say. Didn't send them out for chemical analysis or anything like that. But I did with a deep water culture the one time where I basically grew them out. I flushed some of them. So they got clear water for 2 weeks, basically. And then I had another one where I basically cranked the EC. And I went up to about an EC of 5 on those, which is pretty high for growing any kind of plant. And I just kind of left them that way. And when I gave it to my friends and myself, and we did kind of a blind taste test as you would, no one could tell the difference between which one was which. I think really what comes down to everything is in how you dry and cure. And I think that's really the biggest thing that we see a lack of in this industry in general, is that everyone puts a lot of time into growing the nicest flowers they can. And especially when we come to commercial, talking about that, everyone spends all this time growing flowers. It comes to the harvest and the dry and cure, and everyone just goes, oh, it doesn't really matter at that point. You know what I mean? And it just kind of, that your quality just goes down very quickly. So I would say the things like that, everything I've seen really comes down to the moisture content that you have in the dried flower, as well as the water activity that you have.
Yeah. Okay. So, and again, I'm a guy who does not dry. So I wash all of my stuff and I go right into the freeze dryer and I use pressing. So that sort of process is tedious, time consuming. It takes up a lot of space. So for me, I'm glad I don't have to do it anymore. I really am. Because that's what it sparked when you said, oh, if you do water at the end, you see it plump up a little bit. And I was wondering, it was like, oh, maybe that would be good for washing versus not. And like I said, I usually do only I think Floraflex calls for 1 week of flush, and that's and I'm doing it in cocoa, and that's what I've done. And I had to take a plant down because we were going away for a family emergency. So I did it with only like 2 days of flush, and because kind of like you, I didn't notice the difference. But that was back when I was drying and curing and stuff like that. So yeah. Okay, interesting. What do you think it would be anything different if we were washing it versus whatever? Do you think that would impact it?
Again, if you're looking at kind of washing or any kind of sifting kind of production side of things, right? I think having more surface area and having it kind of spread out a little bit more, hold a bit more water would probably work better for you if you're not getting to that drying part, right? You have a bit more surface area exposed that way to help knock those off.
Yeah. But I don't dry, right? Because so whatever it looks like there, it's going into the freezer, it gets frozen, whether that water content's there. But I guess it would be just less to hydrate when I put it in the water anyways, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I have. What would you say that amount, like how many plants could I, and like, I don't know, I don't have a quarter or anything. No, that's a bad thing. I don't even know. For size comparison.
Oh, do we lose them?
Good, you're still here. I picked up my mouse to do a side comparison, and I hit the back button, and I was gone. That was too funny. But yeah, it's a fair size. You know what I mean? Like, I could pollinate a lot of plants with that, can I?
Yeah, pollen goes a really long way, right? Again, really to pollinate, you need 1 granule of pollen to make that seed in a pistil. So that pollen spreads very, very far. And I think, again, what some people will do is you can basically take some flour, put it in the oven, kind of cook it down so it's sterile. And then you can mix kind of like up to 50-50 flour and pollen to help it spread a little bit further as well, especially if you're going the paintbrush kind of way. Another thing is also makes it a little bit heavier. So when you do put it into a room, anything that doesn't hit the plant kind of is more likely to fall down to the floor as opposed to go everywhere in your room. So you can see it kind of go a couple different ways that way, and you'll see different people use different approaches.
So that interests me. So cooking flour like on a baking sheet or something? Is that what you would do?
On a baking sheet? Yeah.
Like 400, 500? Like what? How do you do that?
Like
I've never heard of that.
300, 350 for like, I don't know, 5-10 minutes. You know, it'll get it really nice and dry, and then basically it's nice there. Then you can kind of mix it. Basically, a 1-to-1 mixture I found has worked pretty well overall. Kind of dilutes your pollen a little bit and helps it spread a little bit more evenly. Because again, you have so much pollen there, right? That especially if you use the paintbrush approach, I've seen people dip a paintbrush and then paint a bud, and you're getting just so much pollen. You know, if I need 1 pollen granule, you know, we're just getting it on.
So would you do that? So do you suggest putting that right in here with the beads and everything to store for the next year, or only do it when you're mixing it?
You could do it either way. I typically like to take out what I'm using and I'll mix with flour that way, just to spread it, just in case. You know what I mean? But
yeah, you would hate to have some wet flour, right?
But yeah, and that's the thing. Just in case.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess now I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, so fertilizer, perfect. Check. I got it. That was easy. But moving forward, if now, so I'm at week. So what did I pollinated at day 22, I think is where I was, about 22 or 23. Everything was looking nice. There was nice. It was in my opinion, I think it was probably the perfect time. The pollen was good because it was a week ahead of time. And I guess it's good. So now I'm looking at maybe any more hiccups. I've got the fertilizer. I'm going to be watering. I'm going to be doing that thing. Anything specific to seed production and finalization, because that's really the next. And I guess I went to almost say 4 or 5 more weeks, but from my understanding, if a plant has an 8-week flowering period, to produce those seeds, it's not 8 weeks anymore. So do you have any experience on whether it's an 8-week strain or a 6-week strain or whatever the week? 6 is ridiculous. Let's not, I know you have a 6-week strain, so that's why I said it. But whether it's an 8 or a 9, because there's some like GMO stuff that goes like 11 and 12 weeks to finalize the flower, right? If it is, let's just call it 60 days, how much longer to finalize the seeds?
So really, when it comes to seeds, I don't look at it kind of in terms of a normal, typical flowering time like you would normally. What I'm looking at is more the maturity of the seeds. So when it gets pollinated, that pistil is going to turn brown, and that's when you know which kind of pistils themselves have actually pollinated. And then from there, you're basically going to see it swell up as that seed forms inside that bract. And when the seed gets mature, it basically like splits open, and you'll see kind of a brown seed that's starting to poke out. So really, I'm looking at kind of the maturity of the seeds. I want those to start splitting open so I can see where those seeds are and make sure that they are mature. I've seen a lot of people, what they do is they won't let the plant go long enough. And because of that, you end up harvesting, you get kind of those greener looking seeds. You want like a nice kind of brown seed, nice and mature so that it will germinate effectively for you going forward. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll basically wait until the seeds look like they're starting to split open, all the little pods, and then I'll stop kind of irrigating at that point and let them dry down for a couple days just to really force that plant into that final stage where it thinks it's dying, to put all that excess energy that it has into the seeds that are forming that are still there. And then from there, I'll usually just cut down the plant and put it on one of those mesh drying racks, just because then I can store the plant and any of the seeds that do fall out will stay in that mesh rack. If you try and hang dry a plant like you typically, or a lot of people typically do, what you find is the seeds as they dry are going to start falling out and bouncing off the table, and you're going to have seeds kind of everywhere. So especially when I look at your tent where you have a whole bunch of different cultivars that you're kind of doing all at once, you don't want the seeds all bouncing around and getting all mixed up.
Yeah, and that's how I used to dry, because I was very small area and I hate hand trimming, so I always just shut the buds into a trimmer that would do it, and then it would into those accordion kind of things, right? And each one, I would not think, is that what you're talking about? One of those accordion type? Yeah, okay. So I wouldn't imagine seeds I've never had a seeded plant in there to know. Yeah, so the seeds aren't going to go from unit to unit, and even if they did, I'd put maybe some or some paper bags in there or something to do it. But I highly doubt it would even go from rung to rung, right?
No, I mean, you do see difference in seed sizes depending on the cultivar. Some will produce really fat seeds, other than a little smaller. But I haven't had any seeds kind of fall between those mesh layers yet, so I think you're good overall, pretty much with any plant.
No. Nice. So I know that in your facility, I think I've heard you talk about Rockwool quite a bit. Have you? And I'm not Rockwool because I'm in cocoa, but I'm in bud cups, right? So I'm irrigating 3-4 times a day, 8 to 10 minutes every watering. So have you ever done a seeding run in Rockwool, or do you do it usually in a different medium? Like, should I have maybe not done my cocoa this time if I was doing seeding and like maybe move forward with something else? I'm just, when you say that, I go, let it dry out. I go, man, it's dry by hour 3. You know what I mean? Like,
no, that's fine, right? So I find the media that you use for the plant doesn't actually matter. I haven't seen kind of one do better or worse for seeds. They all produce seeds. So I wouldn't be too worried about what media you want to choose.
Okay, but the watering, I might have. So, yeah. Okay, so that's a good point. So I'm going to look at it because, listen, everything got pollinated the day I did it. There's no way that something got pollinated later. Like, I'm not leaving a plant in there, because that's what I remember. I was talking to, I forget who it was. Forgive me. I talked to so many people. Somebody was talking and they're like, oh, I leave the male plant in there all the time. I just let it go. Is that like, because I thought about it, I go, well, wait a minute, would you get, like, let's pretend it only did so much and you didn't have this crazy big cloud, and if you left it in there all the time, wouldn't you get different pollination events, I guess you would call it, and then have seeds at this stage and this stage and this stage? So you'd want to make sure you hit everything all at once, correct?
Yeah, typically I'll keep the males in there for, say, day 14 to 28. And then after that window, I'm going to take them out. And again, kind of like when you see kind of those bottom flowers, bottom buds that are coming out, they don't really mature, right? So they're coming in, they're slower growing, they're kind of later to the party. So anytime those get pollinated, that's where you get kind of those light green seeds that aren't viable, or less likely to be viable. So again, you're just really trying to get as many to be done at the same time as you can, right? At full maturity.
Okay. And I guess those bottom ones is because of light penetration, because of just them. So I have just recently, and full disclosure here, I just did it. I only did it. I've got some under canopy lighting.
Mhm.
And this is Floraflex's product, and they had two different models, and what they sent me was a far red version of their under canopy lighting. They have a full spectrum white version, and it was cheaper. I guess the red diodes must be more expensive, I'm assuming. So, and when I had put that out there, and because I have no clue and I don't know much about it, I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. I put it on. Someone's like, oh, you're doing far red. You're doing it all the time? I go, yeah, I'm doing it all the time. You're not really supposed to do that. I wasn't sure if I was overkilling it with the reds, or like, it's any sort of, I guess, back to the seed portion of this video, like, is there a better spectrum for seeds? Like, should I be using full spectrum white down there for under canopy for seeds, or is the far red still okay at this 12-12, the same time I have the other lights on from the top?
Yeah. To be honest, I don't know. I haven't really played around with light spectrum with seeding specifically.
Okay.
One thing that I have kind of seen and I've played around with a little bit is there's certain people that I've talked to that when they start seeding their plant, they'll have everything flowering, they'll do the pollination thing, and then once they pull the male out, they'll switch those plants back to a veg light cycle, so an 18-6. And they say it helps the seeds mature better. Again, I haven't really noticed a better way one way or the other, except for you pay for more hydro when you have a veg cycle than a flower cycle. So I lean towards the flower for that reason alone. But there are some people that swear that you get better germinating seeds by doing that. So both ways do work, but I haven't seen a major difference kind of one way or the other.
And you're saying it like that day 28, because if you're going to something and you need those extra weeks, let's just say instead of 8 weeks, you're now going to 10 weeks. If you switch it at day 28, like, you're 18-6 for quite a long time, right? Like, it's past that. That sounds
just from the hydro alone, it's like, wouldn't do it, but
and for our American friends in the chat, hydro in Canada is how we pay for electricity. So anytime you hear a Canadian going, oh, the hydro bill's ridiculous, you go, hydro? Is he doing hydroponics? No, that's electricity. So I see what you're saying. I did see something even 13 or 4, like, not 18. I was thinking about switching it to 13 just because I'm like, oh, why not have a little bit extra? You know what I mean? But yeah, I never would have thought of 18, but you're saying some people do it. So that's cool, man. That'd be a cool little, again, like you said, you didn't see much of a difference. So why waste the electricity, right? So,
yeah.
One
thing you do see when we talk about kind of flowering plants in general, some plants, and again, it seems very cultivar specific, you can kind of increase that photo period time. So instead of running a 12-hour day, some cannabis plants will go up to 13, 14 and still flower very well. And you actually put on a bit more yield that way. But it is very cultivar strain specific. Not all plants like it.
And with me, I know in your area, you sent me a picture the other day on Instagram, and we were very similar in the amount of different cultivars we had, but yours was in a whole freaking room, and you had like these cool, like, they were like little pods over each plant. Hey, what was that? Like, so was that something that was smaller than 25 microns so the pollen couldn't come out? Is that what it was?
Yeah, so I've basically built some pollination chambers that I've done here at the college so that I can basically do multiple crosses in a room without contaminating any crosses with each other. So it's basically a really small micron mesh, so it'll be smaller than that 25, 30 micron that the pollen is, so nothing's escaping. So I basically put the plants in, you leave them there until you kill out the males. The biggest problem when you get to a tent like that is that they don't breathe. So it's really hard to control any of your humidity. So there are things that play against you. And that's where, again, keeping that male in there for, say, a 2-week span, you don't want to go a whole lot longer than that because the male really starts rotting out in those bags specifically.
Yeah. And listen, I'm never going to be able to do that. And listen, it was cool. When I seen them, like, what is this, some freaking pod? Like, it looked like some alien stuff or something. I was like, this is cool. So that I'm glad you said humidity. I mean, I know it was a different topic, but so humidity. So listen, I know VPD and everyone swears by it. I am not a VPD guy. I might be a VPD guy in veg, sure. But when I get the flower in my tent, and even out, and in Ontario, we have very humid summers, right? I hate bud rot. I hate powdery mildew. I hate all those things. Mm-hmm. So usually when I do a strain outside, it's been tested. It's a white powdery mildew resistant strain. And you know what? When you have one, I had one, my neighbors, and we did 4 seeds, boom, boom, boom. Seed 1, 2, and 3, not a lick of powdery mildew on it. The 4th one, covered head to toe in the same seed pack. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So while I get that there is some variations in whether this was a 2, 3, 4th generation, it was probably 1 or 2 maybe, because it did have some, 3 of them were good. That's out of the water. So normally I avoid it completely. So what I do, I go on the real low cycle of at about week 4 or 5, I'm dropping my humidity, regardless of what the temperatures are, regardless of whatever it is, in my tent to a low amount where I am not going to get mud rot and I'm not going to get that stuff from humidity features. So I'm anywhere from 45 to 40 to even in the last couple weeks, like 37, and I got a bit of a wave because humidifiers take a second to kick in, and I have a dehumidifier in my tent, so it's decently good, and my basement's very dry. So is that 38 to 45 okay in that sort of last run of the flower when you're doing seeds, or is there like more chance of the seeds getting more is humidity worse off when you're doing seeds, or better off, I guess?
Yeah, they don't seem to kind of matter as much with the humidity when you're looking at kind of the seeds. So you can stick somewhere in the, I'd say again, kind of the ballpark range of say 40 to 55% relative humidity if you can keep it in that. The seeds don't really seem to mind. It's not like flower. You don't really get as much, you don't get as dense of buds when you start seeding, because they basically, once it gets pollinated in that early stage, they start swelling and they aren't growing like a normal kind of a tight compact bud that you typically see. So you will see a bit more kind of airy kind of looking flower when you do have a lot of seeds, especially if you get a really good seed set. It'll kind of space itself out a little bit better. So you don't need to worry as much about the botrytis. Again, the big thing with that coming through is more so from your male plants when you drop those pollen sacs that are kind of dead. That's where you're going to get a lot of that introduction. So as long as you can keep that clean, you should be pretty good. Another thing that I find works fairly well for keeping back like powdery mildew, things like that, is if you go to the store, you can buy powdered sulfur that you mix with water and put that in kind of a misting spray, and just give that a quick mist kind of early in veg. And then I usually do it basically right before the pistils start coming out in the flower stage. So basically 1.5, 2 weeks into flower, and that usually kind of will coat the surface, change the surface pH of the leaf, and prevent powdery mildew from being able to grow as effectively. So I find that really knocks it down for especially growing at home in a tent.
Okay, that's cool. I was looking for something I had here. I was probably a little bit late. So I was in a bucket right here. So and I've never used that, and that's kind of cool, and that's sort of preventative, right?
Yeah.
It's usually right there. My wife moved it. Don't worry, that's what happened. But what I did have, and before I realized there was strains that were, white powdery mildew resistant, which is a very cool thing to have when you're here. It definitely helps, man. I couldn't believe the difference. I'm like, because what are we going to do? I said, listen, I have some stuff at home. I said, we could try to get rid of it. I go, but those 3 are looking amazing. Let's cut that one down and just move on. It was stuff used for, I'm going to say it's potassium bicarbonate or something. It was something that I found on the internet that was used for lowering pH in beer. Is that the right word? Is that the right stuff?
So you'll see, potassium bicarbonate people use to kind of lower their pH as well, raise their pH. Is what you'll use it for typically. One other thing that seems to work pretty well is silica that you would kind of add in for kind of as a supplement in your different plants, potassium silicate that way. You can mix that with a bit of water, and I've seen spraying the plants works as an effective kind of preventative for the plants that way as well.
Well, and that's it wasn't preventative. I didn't know I was going to have it, and I had it. So then it was it knocked it down, and it went away the next day. And then about 2 or 3 days later, it started to come back. So I sprayed it again, and it went away for 2 or 3 days. So it was keeping it at bay. Mm-hmm. But man, it took, the plants were, it was like, and again, I was doing it on the big fan leaves on the outdoor plants, but those leaves were like, they were having a hard go. They were not liking it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So now listen, I am a huge proponent of airflow and cutting the leaves and having that, that resistant strain, I won't grow it again. Like, you know what I mean? So I don't know if everybody here knows about the plant that you guys are working on. So maybe I'll ask a question about that plant, because I'm curious. Is that plant also, like, because I know it's short in time, and you can, you know, tell everybody about it. And then I'll ask my question. How about you? Let's tell everybody what you came up with in your mad science world there.
So we've made a couple of different plants. So one is a tetraploid, so it has 4 sets of chromosomes instead of 2 that you typically see in a plant. And then we've basically released some of those through the University of Guelph. And then we also have some triploids or seedless cannabis. So these ones have 3 sets of chromosomes instead of 2. So to make a seedless plant, what you do is you take a tetraploid, has 4 chromosomes. You're going to cross it with a normal plant that you have, or a diploid with 2 sets of chromosomes. And what that does is that you're going to get, from the tetraploid that has 4 sets of chromosomes, it's going to give half. So it's going to give 2 chromosomes over. And then for the normal plant that has 2, it's going to give 1, give half. So that resulting plant is a triploid, so 3 sets of chromosomes. Because of that, it makes it essentially a sterile plant. So it can't be pollinated going forward. So if you think of kind of seedless watermelon, things like that, that's how these are made. It's the same kind of process. So again, when we talk about seedlessness, you look at a seedless watermelon in general, and you have basically, sometimes you see those seeds that are starting to form, they aren't triploids.
No, that's a side joke. No, that's a side joke.
Like
yeah. You caught
so
that funny.
you see that they do produce some seed, but a lot of times it's a non-viable seed they are producing. We are finding that different cultivars, different strains are being a bit more seedless or a bit less seedless in general. So it is kind of something we're working through. But the big thing that we have is we've released a tetraploid that flowers in 6 weeks, and as well as a triploid that finishes in 6 weeks. So those have just gone out to the market a couple weeks ago. So any kind of, it doesn't go to the home market, it goes to more of the commercial market, but any global area that is able to grow legally, we can get this kind of into that country now and give people access to that. So it gives people the ability to make their own triploids going forward with any of the cultivars they have, as well as trying out some of our triploids. And again, that 6-week flower time is really a game changer for anybody, really. Like growing at home, that's awesome. Commercially, you're looking at an indoor facility. If you did a really quick turn, you'd get an extra crop a year, which is huge.
Yeah. No, that's 6 weeks. Listen, the triploids and the tetraploids. I actually have a tetraploid in my breeding thing. Here is one of the 16. It is a tetraploid by Humboldt that was gifted to somebody who then gifted to me, who gifted to me. That came down, whatever. I got it, and I'm trying it just because whatever. And I didn't have very much luck with the triploids the first time, but that avenue, sure, okay, I like it. Outside, you're not going to do it. Also, listen, if I needed some flower and I wanted to do it in the same tent as I was doing this, that would be great for that, right? So I could see the need for it. And like, who doesn't like seedless watermelon? You know what I mean? But the 6 weeks, man, that's like, holy geez. And you know what? Like, I've had some stuff that finished early, never close to that. So, you know what I mean? So, and again, you've hunted through this strain that you have, and you've got it down, and you're not selling seeds, you're selling the clone, right, version of it. So somebody can then take that and work it into their product and go, hey, this is a 6-weeker. You cross it with an 8-weeker. Maybe you get some offsprings that are 7-week or 6-weekers, right? So that's cool, man. And I wish, and I hope, and it's probably not going to ever be the way, but maybe there'll be a company in some province that goes, hey, this makes sense for everybody. We should get this. And then they would probably have good sales. Like, you know what I mean? Like, like I looked briefly into getting a micro, whatever their micro stuff was. And the micro greenhouse or whatever it was with Health Canada to be able to get a license to do it in the square footage. I'm like, oh, this seems cool. And then I talked to somebody and like the paperwork was like a ridiculous amount of money and all. And I'm like, this isn't for anybody, man. Like, I mean, you'd have to have a lot of cash to be able to do this, but it's not micro really. Like there's micro breweries here, there's micro breweries there. This micro grow is not really micro. It's still big money.
It is.
It's kind of sad.
There's a nursery license that you can get through Health Canada. I think going forward, we might see a couple more nursery licenses come up offering genetics to the general public because it is legal, you know, in Canada to grow 4 plants. So it makes sense. And I don't know why that market hasn't really been tapped yet. I know it is seasonal for the most part, and that could be part of the reason. But there have been a couple people we've been talking to, some people out in New Brunswick that we're looking with a nursery residence and can we release some triplets to the market and things like that. So still in talks with people, but I think that is the future and where things will be coming. I mean, I'd love to go to a nursery and like kind of like a flower nursery here and pick up like a 4-pack of mixed cultivars and be like, hey, let's go, let's try them out. There's a need for that in the market. And I just think it's a matter of time until that kind of gets filled.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. Like, why not? And even if it is seasonal, that person who has that cultivar that they're keeping, and that's I would assume that something like this that you guys are releasing, it's not cheap, right? Like you guys are releasing it and it's for a facility, so it's priced for that type of, oh, you're going to then turn around and sell it or turn around and use it, and this is going to be a money maker for you. So it's probably, can you say what it's worth, or is that top secret, or what?
No, we have a catalog online where we kind of have listed out. So it kind of goes, because it's going through the University of Guelph and the way they release other kind of agricultural crops. There's different licenses. You can get kind of a commercial license. There's also breeding licenses and things like that. So depending on kind of which way you go, depends how that works. So the breeding license is a little bit lower, but then it comes with like a royalty model if you want to sell seeds and things like that coming out of that going forward. If you want to use them internally, it doesn't matter as much. So we're looking, depending on the type of license, whether it's for kind of breeding or commercial use, you're looking kind of in the 5,000 to 20,000 range.
That's super cool, man. Like, cause again, if the high end is 20 grand and there was that company out in wherever, New Brunswick, where out on the East Coast, and they spent the 20 grand and then they were to turn around and sell it, I would assume something like that at a clone only variety, even if it was to people, I'd pay $100 for it easy, easy, you know what I mean? So, or even more probably, I'd tell you the truth, 6 weeks, like, man, yeah, I would pay more than that for it. You know what I mean? So they could probably recoup that money if they were selling to the public quicker. Now that's that sort of that game they play where, well, it's hard when somebody's got good genetics, it's hard to release it, right? It's to everybody. Yeah. Right on, man. So I guess we're getting close to an hour, man.
Going forward, you might see a bit more with the triplets.
Okay, yeah. Keep going. Yeah, keep going.
Okay. I think going forward with the triplets, really what I think you'll see people release more clonal varieties potentially going forward, because from a breeder's perspective, there's a lot of time and effort that goes into breeding. You know what I mean? And it goes both ways. Like I love releasing stuff out to the market, and then it's like, great, people can do what they want with it. But at the same time, it also sucks a little bit when it's like, oh, you spent 8 years working on this thing and now everyone just takes and crosses into anything they want. So I think the triploid varieties end up kind of protecting the breeder side of things. You know what I mean? That people would be more likely to release clonal varieties to the market because it kind of protects their genetics. It's out there, people can keep a mom of that, but they're not going to kind of breed that forward. So it keeps them kind of protected that way. So I could see that being a potential angle for kind of the breeding side of the market going forward as well.
Yeah, it makes sense, especially in different markets too, because a lot of markets are not like ours. And again, the Canadian market is, I know everybody looks at Canada and go, oh, it's great, it's legal in Canada. Sure it is, but there's some different stuff, right? So it is what it is. But now we're getting to an hour, and I don't want to keep Scott. I know I said 20 minutes or so, but man, I really appreciate this, man. I know there's been a lot of comments here. People are like, oh, this is great. I think there's been a lot of great information, man. And I'm going to cut this up into some different video clips and post them on the channel because I like, there's some stuff in here where I left the room and clicked the thing, and I'll do some editing, I'll do some stuff, and listen, man, I really appreciate it. And if somebody wants to follow you, what do they do? How do they get in touch with you? If there's somebody in the channel that watches this video in the future that is from a legal breeding thing, what's the best way for them to get their hands on some of this stuff from you?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram. It's at scott.golem. Or you can basically find me on LinkedIn. You'll find me, Scott Golem, LinkedIn. You can find me there, especially when you start talking about kind of all the legal sources and things like that. LinkedIn's probably the biggest place for the legal side of the market right now.
Right on, man. So like I said, thank you so much. Again, great talk. Probably have a few more questions for you because we're coming up, and I get there's a few more topics that we didn't talk, so maybe I'll hit you up and I'll do like a little add-on to this video and finalize it and do the rest. But Thanks again so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for everybody for stopping by, man. I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming in. We got 30 people in here. This is really this is my first live where I've had a guest on, so I really appreciate it, Scott. Number one, buddy.
Thank you.
And I know,
love it. It's so much fun.
Yeah. I know you were looking at doing some stuff on Instagram or social media per se in the future, whether that's YouTube, whether that's Instagram. Anytime you want to, you know, I'm more than thankful enough to just go and post your stuff out. You let us know when you're going live with that stuff, and I think you'll have a lot of people showing up because you've explained it well enough that the simpleton can get it. I really do. There's a few things maybe not, but overall, man, I have learned. I'm gonna rewatch this video for sure, just like I rewatched the ones on Bud Trainer. So if you guys don't know, there is some over on Bud Trainer that we did. I think we've done 2 or 3 of them over there, kind of jointly with those guys, you, me, them, because it's those guys are good too. Another Canadian company. So yeah, again, yeah. Thanks, man.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me on.
And that's it. I gotta find it now. I'm gonna do a little outro thing here, end stream here. I'm still learning here. So stay in the studio. Oh yeah, don't leave. It's gotta upload your stuff. So peace out, everybody. And if you've seen this video before, well, it's the intro and it's also the
Apparently 420 things grow in Ontario. It's a good place. Where Dave's not there, man. Okay. Check out youtube.com/420things. 4 things, things capital, THINGS, 4 DIY. Okay. Apparently you get medical videos, growing and all things a beginner needs to know when you're growing your own medicine at home. Well, I gotta check it out. 420 THI. Oh, youtube.com/420things.